All right. Good afternoon. I'm Brian Michelson with the City of Davis. I'm the Assistant City Engineer. With me today is Adrian Heinig, our Management Analyst. Today, we're going to start this meeting with a 10-minute video. That video will describe our stormwater system and some of the challenges we have with that. We'll also talk about the process that we've gone through to get to this point, and what the rest of that process looks like moving forward and what we recommend to council. After that video, we will provide some answers to some previously asked questions, and then we'll proceed to a live question and answer period. With that, we can go ahead and start that video.
The City of Davis Stormwater Fee Initiative. First of all, what is stormwater? Stormwater is water from precipitation that flows across the ground and pavement when it rains. An important system of drainage inlets, underground pipes, pump stations, and channels convey that stormwater out of the city and into surrounding wetlands and waterways. There are 130 miles of pipes, 19 pump stations, and over 4,000 underground structures that make up the city's stormwater system. This infrastructure is critical to ensure that Davis does not flood when we get a lot of rain. Flooding is caused when leaves and other debris clog the storm drains and pipes, or when water collects in low-lying areas of the city. City crews also clean out stations like this one before every rain event to help prevent flooding. A well-maintained stormwater system effectively moves water from roads and neighborhoods to reduce the possibility of flooding during significant rain events. Another critical component of the city's stormwater program is water quality protection. Stormwater starts as just rainwater, but as it runs off roofs, yards, driveways, and streets, it can pick up pollutants such as dirt, trash like cigarette butts, pesticides, and other materials in its path. These pollutants can harm fish and other wildlife. Currently, the city's detention ponds can help treat stormwater by allowing contaminants to settle out of the water before it reaches local waterways. Recent legislation has mandated that cities in California work to capture trash before stormwater leaves detention ponds. This is a costly undertaking as new infrastructure is necessary to be in compliance with these state regulations. Did you know that stormwater does not go to the wastewater treatment plant? It is not treated and flows directly to local wetlands and waterways. In recent years, storm drainage systems have become a front line in environmental protection. Keeping pollutants out of stormwater is critical to ensure clean waterways. All property owners in Davis currently pay a storm sewer fee and a drainage fee as part of their monthly utility bill. For a single-family customer, these combined fees total about $6 per month on average. These charges vary by property type and are currently assessed as a flat rate charged per square foot of the parcel. These two fees are shown as one amount on your monthly utility bill. The current stormwater fees have been in place for decades, and while one has an escalator to help the fee keep up with inflation, the other does not. These fees cover most but not all of the current operations and maintenance costs for the stormwater system, but have not kept up with rising costs or regulations, and do not cover the costs to replace aging infrastructure or other necessary capital improvements. The city's stormwater system was built to manage the stormwater needs of a smaller city footprint, and has not been able to keep pace with changing community needs or storm patterns, leading to localized flooding within the city during major rain events. Modifications to agricultural practice surrounding Davis have also contributed to more frequent flooding events in outlying areas. The city also has some aging infrastructure that needs to be replaced before it fails. This South Davis pump station was built in 1965, and the station itself is subject to major flooding. Here is what the South Davis pump station looks like during flood events. Due to higher levels of flooding caused by increased water runoff over the years, city crews have had to install a steel plate about halfway up the door to this station in order to keep the floodwater from entering and destroying the equipment inside, and even that is barely enough to keep the water out. This station did flood prior to welding this plate in the doorway, and the station did fail. Since the plate has been in place, the station has not flooded. However, as can be seen in the photo, it has been close at times. This flooding also causes safety concerns for staff when they need to wade into the floodwater to access the station. Even when not flooded, they have to step over this 2-foot-tall plate year-round. Some of the equipment in pump station number 6, as shown here, has been in use since it was built in 1924 and is well past its recommended replacement date. The equipment in both of the pump stations shown is long overdue for replacement with new, more energy-efficient and higher capacity equipment, but the current stormwater fees cannot cover these costs. State regulations related to stormwater management and quality have also recently been updated. These proposed rates will allow the city to adapt with these changes without competing for funding with other vital city services. As maintenance costs and clean water regulations continue to increase, without a new stormwater fee, the program will struggle to meet its commitment to city residents, businesses, and visitors to keep up with its important flood control and clean water responsibilities. A dedicated and reliable funding source, which would replace both of the current stormwater fees, is needed to provide for clean stormwater, flood control, improved maintenance, capital improvements, and enhanced services. The proposed stormwater rate will be approximately a $7 increase per month for single-family property owners. In order to address these funding issues, city staff initiated a fee study in coordination with the city's Utilities Commission, culminating in a fee report which lays out all of the stormwater facilities and services, projected the program's revenue requirements, calculated how much each type of property contributes to stormwater runoff, and determined how much each type of property should pay as its fair share of stormwater costs. The fee report and proposed fee increases have been reviewed by the city's Utilities Commission and reviewed and approved by the City Council. The fee report shows the current revenues and expenses of the stormwater program. As you can see, projected expenses for this year are currently higher than revenues. The fee report estimated some future needs to add to our baseline values for operations and maintenance. These needs include an increase in the clean water standards the city must meet before it discharges stormwater into the creeks, as well as other operations and maintenance costs. The fee report also quantified the stormwater system's high-priority capital needs, including replacing outdated pump equipment as we discussed earlier, and widening the Covell Channel to meet increased water flow needs. Storm Drain Station number 3, located at the north end of H Street, has been identified through stormwater studies as a high-priority replacement project. This station pumps all stormwater from the area bounded by Covell Boulevard to the north, Russell Boulevard to the south, State Route 113 on the west, and Pole Line Road to the east. Stormwater from this considerably large area all flows to pump station number 3 and is moved to the F Street Stormwater Channel. In 2019, the city was awarded a grant from the Federal Emergency Management Agency to determine the best plan to remodel or rebuild the station to meet the current needs and future needs of the area. Page 21 of the fee report shows the amount of the fees being proposed to cover these costs. The average single-family home would pay about $13 per month on their monthly city services bill for stormwater, with smaller residential properties paying a little bit less and larger residential properties paying a little more. Other types of property would also pay their fair share, as shown here. As with all of our utility funds, there is a robust public process to review how these funds are spent. Each of the city's utilities is a dedicated enterprise fund, meaning the rates pay for the program and program operations entirely and cannot be utilized for other programs. Each year, the city's Utilities Commission reviews each fund, including rate revenue and planned expenditures. Stormwater fee updates will be presented annually to the City Council with the Utilities Commission recommendations for the city budget process. In the past, the city's general fund or loans from other utilities could cover minor required maintenance activities not currently paid for by stormwater fees. But in recent years, the needs of the utility have expanded beyond these minor projects. Property owners will determine whether the proposed fee will be implemented. There are 3 different opportunities to make your voice heard regarding the proposed stormwater fee increase. A notice was sent out to property owners mid-March with information on the new proposed fee. The notice also provided details on how property owners who do not approve of the proposed fee can submit a written protest. There are 4 virtual community meetings being held via Zoom in March and April. Thank you for joining us today. All members of the public are invited to attend one or more of these community meetings. Each meeting will cover the same information. The dates and times are listed in the public hearing notice and on our website at stormwater.cityofdavis.org. On May 4th, the City Council will hear comments from the public in regards to the proposed fee. At the hearing, the written protests will be counted, and if property owners of more than 50% of the properties subject to the fee have submitted a valid protest, the City Council will not be able to take further action in regards to this proposed fee. If there is not a majority protest, then the Council may vote to proceed with a ballot measure. If the Council votes to proceed with a ballot measure, we expect ballots to be mailed to property owners in mid-May 2021. Property owners would have until June 25th to mail or bring in their ballots to the City Clerk. Completed ballots would have to be received by this deadline to be counted. Postmarks will not count. If the City proceeds to balloting for this initiative, we expect the ballot results to be announced at the City Council meeting on July 6th. For more information on the proposed stormwater rates, please visit stormwater.cityofdavis.org. Thank you for joining us today, and we will now start the live question and answer session. All right, so before we start the live question and answer session, we wanted to address a few questions that have already been asked a few times, and we wanted to share those answers here. These questions are listed, and we have longer responses included on the following slides. We've had questions related to how the stormwater fee is charged, if we could use some of the federal stimulus money for stormwater infrastructure, how we define enhanced services, and why we're using a Bay Area CPI. Just one moment. Here we go. The stormwater charge appears as one charge on the monthly utility bill. It is a combination of two charges, which is the storm drainage fee and the storm sewer fee. The only charge that appears on the utility bill that you will see is the storm drainage fee, and that is how it is currently charged, two charges that appear as one. We're still looking into the requirements for the federal stimulus dollars, but all signs point to those funds that have been awarded to the city as being intended for the specific purpose of COVID-19 relief and relief measures only. The city is always looking for opportunities to provide for grants to offset the costs of major projects. In addition, the proposed rates account for a number of necessary adjustments to the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, which are ongoing expenses, including the development of a reserve and funding for routine services that is not suitable for the one-time funding of these types of dollars. And in the notice, we referred to enhanced services. The term enhanced is used to describe services that are not currently being performed or are not being performed as frequently as needed, but are necessary to maintain efficient and effective operation of the stormwater utility and prevent backlogs like the one the stormwater utility is currently experiencing. And finally, the city used the San Francisco Oakland Hayward Consumer Price Index CPU as it is used for taxes, assessments, and fees for agencies throughout the state of California. The cost components of the stormwater program are impacted by a wide variety of factors, so no one CPI is going to be the perfect CPI to use. It's important that we remember that the rate as proposed will not adjust automatically. The CPI index sets the maximum amount for each adjustment up to 3%, but the City Council, with support from the Utilities Commission, will set the actual rate each year based on actual program revenue and expenditures. So with that, as we start the questions and answers with our staff, we want to make sure that we can address as many questions as possible. So we ask that you help us out by asking one question at a time. If you have additional questions, please wait and raise your hand for the next opportunity. If we are not able to get to everyone today, we will post questions on the city's webpage. We have been doing that with each of our other 3 community meetings. The meeting video is posted online, and then the questions and answers are also posted. Please email your questions if you have additional questions that we're not able to get to pwweb@cityofdavis.org, and we will be sure to get you a response. All right, so now we are looking to start the public questions and answers. Please raise your, If you are on the phone, please press *9. It does not look like we have any attendees on the phone. If you are on Zoom, please press the raise a hand button for questions. And we ask if you have comments that are not questions to please send them to pwweb@cityofdavis.org or provide your comment to the City Council at the May 4th, 2021 public hearing. Thank you so much.
Looks like we have a hand raised from Al Wright. Go ahead and unmute, Al.
Hi, I have a question on the questions. I have a couple of questions. So after I finish this, do I just leave my hand up or wait till everybody's clear and then raise my hand?
Yes, if you please ask the first question, and then we'll go ahead and mute you, and then we'll get the next question. And if you can raise your hand again, we'll get to you when you come up again in line.
Okay, great, thank you. So the first question is, why address this in 2021? Why we're in the the worst humanitarian crisis in our lifetimes, and people are stressed financially, emotionally, people losing jobs, record unemployment, etc. So why go for a utility increase that's like 400% now?
Sure. So if I understand your question, you're asking why would this be a proposal that we are looking at right now in 2021? The city's been working on this effort for a number of years. We started this process as resources allowed a few years ago in terms of looking at creating the assessments that we needed to be able to determine the costs for the stormwater utility moving forward. We've done, some work with some of our neighboring agencies to learn about the agricultural processes and how that impacts the city's stormwater program, and that's also taken some time. I don't know if Brian, you have additional information you'd like to add in terms of why we might be looking at this now.
No, I think everything you said, Adrian, is absolutely right. This is something we've been working on for years with other studies, as was mentioned. We started the process. We didn't realize that COVID-19 would be coming, but we're moving through that process, and the utility is in need of some additional funding to be able to carry out basic needs for the city to prevent flooding, which is certainly a concern. So, at this point in time, we have the background work done. We are continuing with that work forward. We will see where the process takes us. Understand your concern, but we also need to watch out for the safety of the residents of the city of Davis as well, and try to address this the best we can.
All right.
We've got a question from Randy. Go ahead and unmute.
Hi, I'm just wondering why the rate would go up by so much. Obviously, for most people, the average single-family home, $160 a year is probably not going to be particularly impactful. But when you look at the percentages, you're literally doubling the rate. What's happened in the system that you would need twice as much money today from the past?
So, go ahead, Brian.
No, I was going to say, the last time we raised rates was in 2005. There has been a need to look at this and to try to address that. As was previously mentioned in the question we just spoke to, we've been working on studies to try to determine what that appropriate rate would be to meet our current needs. And because those studies had not previously been done, we were not sure what that cost would be. Now that we have those studies done and we have a better handle on what the true costs within our system and the needs are, that's why we're moving forward now. So there was a lapse in time where it was not increased. We're trying to move forward now and provide for those needs. So I hope that answers your question.
The other thing I might add, Brian, is that we did, with the introduction of Proposition 218 in 1996, the methodology behind how stormwater rates can be adjusted changed. And there's a great deal of resources that go into that process. So we did want to make sure that prior to going into the process of adjusting the stormwater rates, that we had those studies in place to be able to determine, the cost of the utility. We've also seen some, regulatory changes that have been more recent, that have in some ways sped up the timeline in terms of needing to get this process underway.
Okay, we have a question from Kay Miller. Go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. My question goes to the study that was done. What qualifications the agency had, and why did you choose them? Or do you have any additional studies that were done on this study, on the proposed way of raising the rates?
So, if I understand your question, you're asking why did the city pick the consultant that we used for the development of this study, and what methodology, what justification is there for the methodology that was used to develop the rate structure? And the city undertook a request for qualifications, as we do for these types of studies. Sorry, just one moment. We went through a proposal process with 6 consulting firms, which involved interviews with staff and each of the consultants. And we chose SCI for this process based on that request for proposals process. I might ask our consultant, Susan Barnes, who is with us today from SCI, to speak to the methodology behind the rate structure.
Sure. Yeah, so this is Susan from SCI Consulting Group. We have been helping public agencies, to raise funds for things like stormwater and all sorts of other things for decades. And we have, including, several different cities that we've helped with stormwater. So we are, we believe, very well qualified. We work all up and down the state through California, and only in California. So we're experts in the state. So the way that the methodology was derived is basically to look at different categories of properties and to look at what we call impervious surface. So what percentage of these different categories of properties are impervious, meaning that when the rain lands on it, it runs off into the storm drain system. So typically that would be the roof of your house, your driveway, anything that's hard. Parking lots, for instance, are notorious because the whole parking lot is all that water is going to run off into the system. And then the rates were just divided up so that each property would pay its fair share based on the percent of impervious surface. So I hope that answers your question.
Looks like we have a question from Kay Miller. Go ahead and unmute.
Thanks. That didn't really answer my question. I would like to know the methodology of choosing that impervious surface, because I was here last month and I shared my story. I live on a 3rd acre, but my house is only 1,400 square feet. However, because of the size of my lot, I'm going to be penalized, that's the way I see it, greatly, in a greater manner than other people would.
Okay, yeah, so the methodology was, what we did is we looked at a sampling of all the different kinds of property in the city. We looked at aerial photographs and measured the impervious surface for each different type of property. And using that method, we came up for an average of each one. And so whenever you do an average, of course, there are going to be, unfortunately, some properties that might have a little bit more impervious surface and some that might have a little bit less. But unfortunately, it's just not cost effective for the city to measure the impervious surface on every single property every single year. And it would have to be done annually in that case, because people might add driveways or add pavement or take away pavement to plant things, or all sorts of different changes could happen. So we try to do it in the most fair manner. And remember, it's not just the size of your house, but it includes driveway, garage, any other thing. But, but again, it is an average, and we think that's the most fair and proper way to try to do this in a cost-effective manner.
And we have a question from Al Wright. Go ahead and unmute, Al.
Thanks. I found the button. This is something brought up last time. I really didn't get a very good answer to it, which was it's a question of fairness, similar to what the one that was just asked about the building size versus the lot size. So there are people that just can't afford a 200, 300, 400% increase. I mean, a lot of us that can, but a lot of people that can't, and there was no real accommodation for that in the proposal. And so, I the last meeting that people really helpful, they said that was based on some legal requirements or something, but I still don't understand it. So if somebody could help clarify that, that'd be great.
Sure. So essentially, with Proposition 218, the way that it was developed, and it's the guiding metric by which state agencies go ahead and set rates for utilities. The guiding message of Proposition 218, if I can call it that, is one of fairness and equality. So each person pays for their impact to the storm drainage system, and no more and no less. And because of that direction, state agents or local agencies cannot use revenues from the utility for any kind of subsidy for any of the customers. So you cannot use rate revenue to subsidize stormwater customers, because then one customer would potentially be benefiting more than another customer for the same service. And that is the reason why we're not able to use rate revenues for any kind of bill subsidy. We did say at the last meeting that there is a mechanism that utilizes late fees for folks who have, had a penalty on their bill, to put that money into a fund that some residents, should they qualify, can sign up for, that would reduce the overall cost of their bill. You qualify the same way that you would for the PG&E CARES program. You go through that income qualification process, and that will help to offset some of the costs. The other alternatives for a subsidy would be using general fund dollars, and that's a priority for, or a discussion for the City Council, because obviously there are a number of different priorities to use that general fund for, that is more of a policy call, because it's not constricted in the same way that the enterprise funds are, when they must be specifically used for one type of service.
We have a question from Randy Dodd. Go ahead, Randy.
Hey there. So in one of the reports I was reading, it appears that part of the concern is capital improvement projects, keeping up with capital improvement projects, and that's what part of the fee will be used for. So it seems like in the past, the fees weren't established well enough to keep up with the aging infrastructure. Oh, and by the way, if this is going to replace that pump station with the big steel plate where people have to climb over, I hope so, because nobody should have to climb over a steel plate to do their job. So, but my question is, will this new rate cover ongoing capital improvement projects? In other words, will this sort of rate sort of be handling anything that might come along in the future, or are we going to have to readdress that again later?
That's an excellent question. So if I understood what you asked, really it's are we able to address the capital improvements that we've listed in the report through this rate structure, and does the rate structure include some forecasting to make sure that we're not in this situation in the future?
Correct.
I would say thank you. I'll ask Brian Michelson to speak to the CIP piece and being able to address that. But I will say that yes, the structure as currently proposed includes a reserve which would address exactly that issue, and we would not be in a situation where we would lack the funds to be able to conduct necessary studies or capital improvements moving forward. One of the things that we've talked about a few times in regards to the rates that we receive for the stormwater utility is that we don't receive enough rate revenue to be able to cover debt service. So by raising the rates, we would also be able to incur debt on the utility, which is calculated into the current rate structure as part of the report. That information is in there, that will be able to aid the city in completing these projects without having to return to the ratepayers for any additional assistance. And Brian, I don't know if you want to talk about the capital improvement projects moving forward.
Yeah, so we have figured in the 4 priority projects. At this point, we've also looked at the other replacements. We have calculated into the fee that those replacement projects can move forward based upon this current fee. Moving into the future, we anticipate that they will also be covered for other potential projects that will come up based upon their age and the needs as it goes forward. So, hope that answers your question.
We have another question from Al Wright. Go ahead, Al.
Thank you. Not sure who answered my last question, but she did a really good job, so thank you for that. And it's a follow-on to Randy's question, because I read the fee report, and it wasn't clear to me what was ongoing versus one-time expenses. So it looked like there was about $1 million. It's a $2 million. I'll just explain my understanding, then you can help me with my question. There's about a $2 million, current budget to handle the, this service, and then between the consultant and the staff, there's another $1 million a year for projects, and then it looked like there's another $1 million for servicing debt for the capital improvement fee. That's how I interpret it. I mean, there were a lot of numbers there. So I guess it's just not clear what's like the $1 million for the ongoing for the projects versus the capital expense fees. I'm just not clear what's what. So if you could help clarify that, that'd be great.
Sure. And my name is Adrienne.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
So there are, it is complicated because anytime you're talking about incurring debt for, for something, it gets complicated quickly. But yes, currently the revenues for the stormwater system are about $2 million a year. And that covers, our current operations to an extent, although this year we did see a little bit of a deficit. But it does not cover the ongoing and one-time capital needs according to the capital improvement projects or our operations and maintenance. And that's where I would offer is the best way to look at your question. Our operations and maintenance are the ongoing costs. And those are going to be a combination of the, infrastructure work that the team needs to do, clearing out the lines on a regular basis, keeping the pump stations operating. They've done a magnificent job in doing that, considering some of the age of our system. And then in addition to that, the regulatory requirements are also ongoing. And that would be, the stormwater quality testing, making sure that all of our systems are trapping the trash that is necessary prior to having that water, go out into the distribution ways and into our water systems. So those are ongoing costs, and those are increasing. So then the regulatory requirements that the city has based on the stormwater quality permit we're required to have been increased, and that is an ongoing cost. The capital improvement costs would be more of the one-time costs, and those would be associated with the replacements of those pump stations that have clearly reached the end of their useful life. We also have reviews of our pipe distribution systems. Those would be one-time costs. So I hope that helps. Yes, it is a bit confusing. but there's really a few things that make up the functional costs of the system that kind of toe the line between being, ongoing costs and those one-time costs. And I don't know if, Brian, you have anything to add to that?
I think that was a good summary. Absolutely, the upgrades to the stations, which are large, much larger costs for the reconstruction or rehabilitation of those stations, are one time. Yes, the ongoing maintenance and operations, there are increases all the time through fuel for pumps, the cost of materials, the cost of a lot of the different things that go along with that. And yes, the regulatory goes up considerably, and which is uncontrollable for the city. Unfortunately, it's controlled by the state and others. But yes, I think that's a good summary, Adrian, and hopefully the information I provided helps.
We have a question from Al. Go ahead, Al.
Oh gosh. Okay, so I just, this is just a clarification, but then I'll ask my question. So what I just interpreted was that the annual increase are for the ongoing cost increase, and then the $29 million capital fund is for the one-time cost. That's how I interpreted your answer. So you can correct me if I got that wrong. The question I have is the $29 million capital cost. So there was, it looked like in the fee report that there's monies it's an extra $1 million to service, and what I'm assuming is debt for that. And so if we're taking on debt, then the actual cost is more than $29 million if you're going to spend $29 million. So the question is, like, what would the full cost of the $29 million be, including the servicing of the debt?
That is an excellent question. We have, the way that the fee study was created, it does cover the costs associated with incurring the debt, which would essentially be an ongoing cost, in addition to the $29 million of necessary capital improvements. So the approach that the city and the consultant and ultimately the Utilities Commission took to developing the cost of service was looking at completing some of these larger capital improvement projects as soon as possible, because a lot of the work is needing to get done, in some cases quite quickly. In other cases, we can, set priorities as has been discussed in a few of the documents that were reviewed by the Commission and the Council. But we know that a lot of those projects need to be completed in a relatively short period of time, which absolutely does involve incurring debt. And one of the things that we discussed quite a lot with the Utilities Commission was how to approach that debt and how to approach incurring that debt. And the way that the structure was developed covers both the cost to get the debt and also the interest or the additional payment that might need to be paid in receiving that debt. So that all was calculated into the fee that is proposed. And if I may jump back to the previous question you asked, as a good reminder, the debt service and that debt taken on by the utility would be an ongoing cost. There's not a lot of major utility projects that a jurisdiction can do without incurring debt. At some point, obviously with the city of Davis, we've incurred debt for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade and the regional water plant that was constructed to provide surface water to the city. Those types of projects are multi-million-dollar projects and necessitate, bringing on that debt. So it's something that is, I think, fiscally prudent and responsible for an agency to include within that calculation. And I do know that has been done through that process. in terms of the details of how that debt was calculated, I do not have that immediately in front of me, but we could check in if there's further questions with our consultant, or we can certainly address that via email if you'd like to submit that comment to pwweb@cityofdavis.org to provide more information on that. And again, Brian, I don't know if you have anything additional to add to that.
No, I think that covers it well. The other part of the question was the 3% increase or whatever it may be that year as approved by the Commission and Council, recommended by the Commission and approved by Council. That would apply not only to operations and maintenance, but also the capital projects as, materials go up, as I mentioned before, but that applies to capital projects as well for materials, consulting fees, and other things that would be a cost of doing that project. So, yes, that fee increase is accounting for both of those operations and maintenance and capital projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
It looks like we have a question from Kay Miller. Go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. I will admit I have not read the proposition. However, I wanted to find out what measures were taken to allow for incentives for a greener Davis. I myself was, before this project, considering putting a rain collection system. I was also considering doing gray treatment water, gray water treatment. I also, from when I purchased this home to this last bill that I received, I have decreased my consumption from 32 CCFs to 2 CCFs a month. But I don't see any motivation to continue to do that because my fees are going to be what my fees are going to be on the rest of the charges. And furthermore, why invest on something that will not be incentivized, as I remember from last month's meeting?
Sure. So really kind of touching back on that question of whether or not there is a single family property rate credit that might be offered through this current structure. And, to repeat what we said last time, there was not a single family credit that was, included in this study. What the study included was a commercial credit, which is a low impact development credit for developments that fall under California state law requirements for how stormwater is captured and treated. One piece that would be something that the city could look at in looking at that single family property credit is exactly how and how that would work. I think one of the things that makes the low impact development process work is there is a set of criteria that is established that each commercial development would be evaluated by, and studies that have been done to demonstrate that the processes that they put in place based on California law are doing the necessary diversion and treatment requirements to be able to qualify for that credit. With single family properties, there's a wide variety of things that they might look to do in terms of treating stormwater or capturing stormwater, some folks might have rain barrels, some might have larger systems. And I think that there's a warranted look into that, but it would take some time to determine, how that might be able to be applied to single family properties, again, with that wide variety of different methodologies to address stormwater. I know that's not an answer that you want to hear, but we did indicate the last meeting that the rate credit for single family properties could certainly be included in discussions in the future. And I will say that at the May 4th City Council hearing, we are planning on bringing all of the comments that we received during these public meetings to City Council for their consideration, including the comments related to the credit for a possible credit for single-family properties, and that is something that the City Council could certainly look to provide direction to staff on. And I hope that answers the question, even if it's not exactly what we want to hear.
Adrian, I don't know if it would be okay for me to jump in.
Sure. So we also have with us Dawn Calciano, who is our city's water conservation coordinator. And go ahead, Dawn.
So I just wanted to mention that a couple of the things that you mentioned there definitely reduce your water consumption. And from what you've said and your CCF usage, you've reduced that substantially. And we still would have those benefits on, there's a lot of overlapping benefits between stormwater and water conservation. And so you may see those benefits more on the water reduction side than maybe you would see on the stormwater side. So just wanted to mention that and applaud you for the efforts that you've been doing, especially going into, another dry year in reducing water usage on your property. And it looks like we have a question from Al Wright. Go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Dawn. So, and Adrian, you kind of missed my my last question a little bit about the full cost, because where it's coming from, when we vote on a proposition that has a bond, we get the information on what's being borrowed and then also the interest, and so we can see the total amount. And so that was what I was trying to get to. Is like, is the total amount? Is it like, if it's like a house, if we're financing $29 million over 30 years, it's like, basically you pay twice that, right? So that's what I was trying to get to. So if there's anything else you can add to that, that'd be great. But my question is now, on submitting written comments, I don't have the letter anymore, and so I'm wondering, what's the best way to, what's the proper way to do that? And then would a survey being signed by people also be considered a written comment?
So to address your last question first, in terms of the formal protest to City Council, there is a process that is defined by that notice of public hearing, and that is essentially it's lodging that protest formally against the adjustment for the stormwater fees. If you are talking about providing feedback or comments to council, that is a much more informal process, and certainly can be done in a wide variety of ways. So there are public comments. You can call in to the City Council. I believe it starts at noon on the day of the meeting. That information is online and on the agenda for each council meeting, and leave up to 3 minutes of public comment that gets played for the item, the protest hearing for the rates. You can also send any communication that you would like, of course, to City Council members at any time. That would include surveys. That would include any kind of written information that you might have. And that can be shared, obviously regardless of the time, via email to City Council members that way. And they certainly do receive that information. So in terms of the actual protest process, there is a very prescribed way to do it that is in that notice. And if you have questions, again, please email pwweb@cityofdavis.org, and we can get that wording over to you to ensure that that is what you would like to do. Otherwise, if you're just looking to communicate with City Council, like I said, there is the public comment phone line that is by noon the day of the meeting, and then also sending an email to the City Council members. And that email address, I believe, is citycouncil@cityofdavis.org, but I can look that up to be sure before the end of this meeting and make sure we have that information for you. The total cost. So I apologize for not answering the question prior. I guess what I was trying to say was the total cost of incurring the debt and the debt payment is included in the total of the rate revenue necessary to be able to, to move forward with the stormwater utility with the level of service and the capital improvement investments and that all of that work. So that would include the payment of interest that would be associated with the incurrence of the debt. One of the challenges of this is that we don't know exactly when we will be able to, approach those projects or the timing of those projects, because that is obviously through, if the rates are approved and with discussion of council and the commission to ensure that they are also looking to have those projects move forward. So there's a total that is included within the fee report that covers the payments on that debt, but it's not broken down in a way that might be a little more specific that we might want to see just because, this is a larger kind of project. And there are a number of projects included in it. And to revise what I just said, so city council members at cityofdavis.org is the email address for our city council. Again, that's city council members, all one word, at cityofdavis.org. And I will say we are getting to the end of our time today. It is 1:53. We have 7 minutes left. If we were not able to get to your question, please email that to pwweb@cityofdavis.org, and we will have someone get back to you and make sure that question gets addressed. Like I said, we are going to have all of these comments summarized and provided to the City Council at their meeting on May 4th, that public hearing on May 4th. I will also add that on stormwater.cityofdavis.org, we have a number of handouts and informational items that have been developed by the city on the stormwater utility, including an informational booklet called Stormwater Utility 101 that we've had quite a few people provide some feedback, some very positive feedback on, as a great primer in learning about the stormwater utility and how it functions. We also have the link to the webpage with materials, including the fee report and all of the city council and commission meeting materials that led up to the proposal of this rate structure. I will also add we have a game that was developed in conjunction with college students that can be kind of fun for kids to learn about the stormwater system as well. So we'd like to go ahead and thank everyone for attending this community meeting. This is the last in the series of 4 community meetings that we've held. All of these meetings were recorded, and this meeting is being recorded, and they are posted on our webpage. Again, that page that's linked at the stormwater.cityofdavis.org location. All of the summaries of the questions and answers from each meeting are posted, and with those responses to questions, we've also included links to documents that have more information on the questions that were asked. So it could be a good resource to look at to see, when staff responded to particular questions, if there's additional information that's linked there from city staff. And so with that, I'd like to go ahead and thank everyone for their attendance today. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day.